Welcome to the Urbstead. I'm Ben, and today I wanted to take you on a June garden tour. We just got some really lovely rain, and the garden is looking beautiful. Come along and you'll see all the different patches of the garden. I'll show you some things that are working out really well, and I'll show you some things that aren't working out so well. I'll also take you back and I'll show you in our greenhouse. We had a small tragedy happen yet again, but we're recovering. So let's go ahead and let's get this tour started. To start out, I would like to show you the front yard patch. This is where we put all of our greens, our kales, our broccolis, things of that nature. And I wanted to show you just how beautiful it looks here after this nice, lovely rain that we had. Everything's kind of popping off right now, and we are really stoked. You can tell that I have not weeded in a while, and the weeds are probably getting a little out of hand, way out of hand. But at the same time, our plants are also taking off as well. One thing of note that we will do differently next year is the way we do our cover crop. You can see here that we have some radishes, wild radish, some peas, and some wheat, winter wheat. And these are actually starting to fruit, which is definitely not what you want to let happen. Once these plants get to the place where they're fruiting, that is when they're taking resources out of the ground to put into these fruit, the same resources that we actually want to keep in the ground. So this was sort of a failure, but in the end also it was an experiment. So can you really say it's a failure if you learn something? I think not, but that's kind of a matter of opinion. So I will try this pea out. That's delightful. But I don't necessarily want them to be growing peas here in the rows when we have a pea section just at the end of the row. So, tips for next year. When doing cover crop, understand better how to finish the cover crop. Whether that's tilling lightly or coming in with a weed whacker and just being much more merciless, we'll have to figure that out. But lesson learned. Our wheat, on the other hand, I'm thoroughly pleased with. All these plants are putting out big seed heads, full of berries. We'll see how they do once everything starts to dry up and kind of finish, but I have high hopes. We might even be able to make a whole loaf out of this row of wheat. Woo! It's fun. It's been a fun experiment, and I like how it looks. Our peas are doing work. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of varieties just shoved together, and really shoved together is the operative word here, because they are packed. But they're also loaded down with tons and tons of fruit, which is great. So we're excited to pull in a really big pea harvest. We have been snacking and eating off of the kale so much, and we've loved it. We have beans that are getting ready to come up later in the season. So overall, front yard patch has been a massive success. The other MVP recently has been the strawberry row. I say MVP because we weren't expecting to get much out of this, and we have gotten way, way more than that. Like quarts, which is great. The strawberry row is looking lively. The garlic in the strawberry row is just doing wonderful, as you can see. The asparagus is getting big, bushy, and we've kind of noticed that the strawberries are not getting picked on as much this year, and we're curious if the ferniness and the bushiness of the asparagus has sort of acted as like a barrier to keep away some of the bigger critters that like to eat the strawberries. Not totally sure on that, but something is protecting the strawberries. Maybe it's the stinky garlic. The end result is the same. We have been getting lots of strawberries. The berry row itself is doing great success. Our blackberry plant is just putting out tons and tons of new shoots, which we're really excited about. The currants are going to be ripening soon. The other two raspberries are also putting out new shoots that we're really excited about expanding the berry area. And overall, great success. Loving it. We love how the raised beds turned out, the look of the front yard as a result of the raised beds. I'm looking forward to soon finishing up the mulching all along here so it all has one homogeneous look, which we're really looking forward to. And I can't say anything more. I mean, I couldn't be happier. Before these two rains came, everything here was looking pretty dry and barren, and it was hard to keep things watered. And it's just June. So I'm a little leery on what it's going to look like later in July and August, but we'll just have to deal with that when we come to it. All in all, great success, I think. The pollinator row is looking wonderful. All of the flowers are coming in slowly. We are happy to find that we have our dahlias coming back. The lavender section is starting to really take off. And I want to share with you one of the flowers that I am really excited about. This is a kind of lavender that I've never seen before. It smells incredible, as all lavender does, but the flower just looks so unique, and I don't know how to describe it. So here's a typical lavender flower that most people have seen, and this is this variety. You can see quite a difference there. So that's good. That's cool. That's awesome. Getting to see a whole bunch of different kind of beautiful uniqueness in plants. That's probably one of the bigger excitements for me in flowers and pollinator section is just the different intricacies of different flowers. And flowers are just beautiful in general. Plants are beautiful. Whole thing, whole process. We have another section of the garden here that continues to elude me year after year, and that is the corn section. This year we're doing a 5 sisters garden, technically, but typically called a 3 sisters garden. And I don't know if you notice it, but we're kind of missing some corn plants, like a lot of corn plants. And this happens every year. I was hoping that the sunflower plants would be more of the sacrificial lambs, if you will, to take the heat. But as you can tell, the sunflower section is wonderful. And there's about 2 or 3 mounds that are totally devoid of corn, and the rest of them have been mostly picked off. I'll take you down the row here. In other good news, though, the squash have all started to come up, which that is pretty exciting. If nothing else, we're going to have this interesting row full of vining squash, maybe some melon, lots of beans, which I don't know what the beans are going to climb, and sunflowers. So I guess they would climb the sunflowers. Woo! Here you can see one mound that's totally cleared. This one only has 3 corn stalks, 3 corn stalks, 3.5, but that one's not going to catch up. 4 corn stalks, no corn stalks, 2, 1, and then these 3 have been sort of untouched. So loads of beans coming up, squash is coming up, sunflowers coming up, and I think amaranth might be coming up, but the corn is sort of not showing up. Unfortunate. Well, it showed up, but then it got eaten. Sad. Try again next year. Next on the list, I want to take you over here to the tree row, which is kind of popping off. We're really excited about it. And the thing we're really excited about is these nectarine trees. they have nectarines on them. They have like one or two that have stuck around. Looks like three that have yet to get picked off by deer. That will probably change, but it's kind of cool seeing these little fruits start out. Now, I'm not sure at what point they become full-size fruit. I would assume it's probably in the fall, so we have a long time for these to try and survive, but I'm hopeful. And regardless, the trees themselves are really putting on a lot more, well, a lot more branches, a lot more length, a lot more life, which is what you want to see. Our cherry tree, it's kind of looking rough. Our apple tree, also looking rough. And our cherry tree up there, well, that one just basically got cut in half and it's struggling, but again, putting off life, which I'm happy about. If you have kept up with our shorts, you have seen that I was able to have a conversation with an arborist who was working in the neighborhood and get free mulch. I asked for about 4 loads of their truck to be dumped, and they did that. What I didn't expect is that they also dumped maybe another 2 or 3 or 4 loads, and this is what we have now. That's a lot. Like, it's hard to kind of explain the scope here. This was not expected. I'm not actually that mad about it at all because it's more resources. The only problem is our property kind of stops like right here. This property over here does not actually belong to anyone. It belongs to the Department of Transportation, and we are in a conversation to hopefully one day take ownership of this lot. But I'm not so sure how to feel. I asked them to stop here, but I don't feel like I need to call them out here and ask them to move this, since it's not really a person's piece of land. I don't know. It's iffy. Regardless of what happens, we have mulch. We got mulch for years, and that's great because it's going to take maybe a year or two before it's really nice and usable. We had to put in a little bit of effort here to clear off the sidewalk, as this area of the neighborhood is walked all the time, especially by people with strollers. So we just wanted to be conscious of the fact that this sidewalk needed to be usable. Walking through the potato patch, it's kind of cool to see there is a definite either water gradient or nutrient gradient here, because you can tell front right corner things are big. Back left corner and all along the left side, things are still quite small, growing slowly. So I'm not sure if it's because I did not spread out a piece of compost that was here, or if this section has just gotten more water than the rest. Could be a mix of both, which is fine. I think the rest of this will catch up. Since it's only June, we have a long ways that we can wait until potatoes are really necessary. One thing we do get a lot of, though, here is this milkweed. Please don't break. Ugh. No, it's not bad. It's pretty gross stuff. It gets really big really fast, and the sap in it is poisonous, so that's lovely. So I have to pick it out every few days from different places in the garden, or else it gets huge and puts on these berries that look enticing to little kids, but they're poisonous. This is a mulberry tree, one of 2 mulberry trees we have in our backyard, and it is a heavy producer, very heavy producer. And this is what the floor ends up looking like every year. Mulberries everywhere. And any sort of buckets that are left out become catchers for mulberries, very quickly turning into wine, basically. Hooch. Out here in the side yard, the berries don't really get used for much at all. They just rot and sink into the ground, just add carbon, which is great. I'm super happy about it. But in the backyard, they act as free food for the chickens, which I love. Over here in the raised bed side, things are really coming along well. We ended up going with two sets of pepper planters and 2 tomato planters. We have one here that one of the long ones is in use for sweet potatoes. We put some beans on a fence pole here. And in the back we have squash in a couple of them, as well as watermelon. Over here we put some zucchini and squash in leftover grow bags. We still have a couple left to fill. And this bed here, we still don't have full. And that's okay. What I have planted in here is some squash and zucchini seeds. And with the rest of this space, well, you can see some volunteer tomatoes are coming up. And I do have a couple more tomato plants that I want to plant somewhere to give a lot of attention to. I will probably end up using a part of this to do that in. The berries are doing well. The blueberries are doing okay. We've had 4 blueberries so far to eat, which is wonderful. Overall, I think that the plants themselves are doing well. The only thing is it's the water. It's been really dry. That's been really hard on them. One of the berry bushes, just all of the berries on it dried out, which is fine. I'm happy to see that the plants themselves are doing well and getting bigger and healthy and strong. And in these first few years, I believe that's probably all that we can hope for. And any of the berries gained is kind of more of a cherry on top. So that's okay. That's good. You can start to see some of the wildflowers that I planted in the clover row are starting to pop off, which is really lovely. And yeah, these onions are huge. Super excited about being able to harvest tons of onions. Our peanuts, kind of struggling. Only 3 peanut plants actually sprouted. I'm not super sure why or what went wrong, but we'll take what we can get. So we are going to give all the attention we can to these 3 peanut plants, and yeah, hope for the best. One last thing in the front here, and this is one of the items that did not really go as planned, was the teepee, the bean teepee. And the only reason it didn't go as planned is as soon as I planted all the bean seeds, I think an animal came through and dug up most of them. So we only have maybe 20% of the beans sprouted, which it'll still do fine. It's just that it won't really look like I was hoping it to look. That's okay. So I think I'm going to keep the plan going forward and just hope that in the years to come, this area is a little bit more productive and the beans actually sprout so that the teepee can look a little bit more full. But yeah, still pleased. So for my son's second birthday, we decided we would make a playground. And even though our front yard is already sort of a playground, we wanted to use some of the things that we had laying around and try to come up with a cheap-ish version of a playground that still looks really fun to play in. I say cheap, I mean like a way that we can afford it with it still being fun and enjoyable. So we asked around, we got some spare materials. We had a bucket of climbing holds that we were holding onto for a friend. We have a slack line. We have logs. And we were able to find a slide on Facebook Marketplace for really cheap. So we kind of added all those things together. We had these beams that were from an old retaining wall. And yeah, we kind of cobbled all that together. I put together an A-frame that makes up the climbing wall itself. And I can show you here what it kind of looks like on the inside. 2 really simple 2x4 boxes, some OSB on top, and these white oak planks to kind of protect the knees from getting too scraped up. We have this beam that runs across from the tree over to one of the old logs that we had from a tree taken down. And yeah, just kind of came up with something, made a fun little playground, and it's been a hit. The kids have really loved it. Riker is not yet really capable to climb it because he's 2, but he's gotten a lot of use out of that slide, and everyone in the neighborhood has really had a ball. And that's kind of the goal. So the front yard is lush. Side yards are coming along, and it has been a really fun beginning to this growing season. This year, I decided to do something a little bit more than I used to. I planted way more tomatoes and other plants than I needed, and I've been able to sell quite a bit, which has really helped out. Uh, just a small little additional income that has added has really given us a boost in some areas to be able to further some projects. And maybe I overshot it this year, but so far we got about 30 tomato plants left. If I don't sell them, that's fine. I'll pick the best ones out of there and I'll plant those for myself, and then I don't really know what to do with the rest. Toss them to chickens or go plant them in public spaces. I don't know. So I'm not totally sure, but it has been really fun and a really low effort way to add a little bit of additional income. Every sound possible, every urban sound possible. I think the idea for next year is that I would contact all the people that I know that start a garden and tell them, hey, you don't need to plan to go out and buy anything. Just tell me what kind of tomatoes you want, or tell me what kind of peppers you want. So we'll see how that goes. But again, learning experience. Another learning experience is our carrot bed, which has turned into a lamb's quarter bed, a tomato bed. I think that's cilantro or parsley. I have no idea where some of these are coming from. There are technically some carrots growing, and there are a handful of beets. So not a total loss. But the bed looks great and it's functional, but it's a mess. The chickens have gotten in a couple times and totally just destroyed everything they touch, which is great. I love them for that. But a little disheartening. So we're going to chalk that one up as a loss this year. It's a big old L. That's okay. We keep going. And now for the part that made me so sad when I found out. Every couple months, our green queen chicken gets a little broody, and they are known to do that. And so what we do is we kind of put them in detention, and we take a dog crate, we put it in our greenhouse, put food and water in it, and we set that bird in here for a couple days until it gets out of that brooding cycle. Well, I believe one of the kids may have opened the dog crate, or I did. I don't remember who it was or how it happened, but I came out here and the dog crate was open. The chicken had pecked through and dug up everything here and destroyed everything here. Back here along the wall, it hadn't gotten there yet, which is great. But we had about 6 semi-large cucumber vines already here, which is kind of gut-wrenching. But it's okay. We still had 6 seeds left when I went and found them. And they are planted here now, and it's nice and watered. They should grow fine. I think one of them is already starting back there. Maybe even a second one right here. And that's good. And over here, we do have more still growing. Actually, one of them is quite large here. And this is a broccoli plant. This is some alfalfa. These are from our microgreen bag that we just kind of did an experiment with out here. So I'm going to take this green stuff out and get it out of the way of the cucumbers and the one tomato that I want to grow. And I'm going to feed that to the chickens, and it's going to be great and useful and fine. It was just like, it just took me right back to last year when the rats had eaten all of our mature cucumber vines that were putting out fruit like 2 weeks after we started getting cucumbers. And so I just had this like, not PTSD, but like a little flashback moment where I just remembered how it kind of felt like the floor went out from under us with our garden, because our pepper plants had all gotten destroyed. Our cucumber plants had just gotten destroyed. And it just made me feel like, what's the point? It made me feel like, is there actually any possibility for us here in the urban environment to actually provide for ourselves? So that's hard. It's really hard putting a lot of effort and hopes into something that can so easily be destroyed. Which, I mean, to be fair, if that stands for anyone, right? Anyone, everyone puts their hopes in something and puts effort into a lot of things, and sometimes, maybe oftentimes, it falls through, and we are discouraged, disappointed. And so that's how I was feeling, and frustrated, very frustrated. But there is hope. Our hope this year came in the fact that it's not too late. It's only June. We had the amount of seeds to replace the plants that we lost. And we know that since this is a greenhouse, we don't have to really worry about the extended season or the short season. Now that the greenhouse is finished, we don't have to worry about the rats. Will it take a little bit more patience on my side? Yes. Is that okay? Yes. So, we get discouraged. Our plans go to crap. But there's hope. That is a good reminder. So my prayer is that these cucumber plants will do better this year. Starting off rocky, was not very happy with our chicken. The chicken was doing what it's built to do. Dig, and peck, and eat, devour, scratch. You can't fault it for that. One last thing on our list here that I wanted to share in the backyard, which is covered in mulberries, our compost bed. This compost bed has been doing so well. If you've seen the last few shorts, it has been getting hot. And this time I got it up to 125 degrees. And I'm really excited because not too long from now, I am going to look at topping some of our beds. And I think I'm going to use this compost. I'm going to dig through it. I'm going to smell it. I'm going to see how it looks. But I think we're almost ready to use it, which is way faster than the usual timeline that we take, being like a year or 6 months. But this thing has been cooking, and it has been super, super, super active. So we'll see how that looks. If you haven't watched our video on it or seen our latest short, I did finally put an end to this log rack, and I'm really excited to say that all of the wood in our backyard is lifted off the ground, obviously except this little nice row of decorative logs, but it's all off the ground, and I think that our rat problem is one step closer to being finished. It's a lovely feeling. So things that were a big win this year so far. Companion planting has proven to have some pretty simple steps to do, and I believe that we are going to see a lot of fruitfulness from it, which I'm happy about. The additional time in my schedule to actually get out and do things like watering and weeding has also shown to be a little bit more effective, obviously. Projects have been able to go faster, again, pretty obvious. And some of the new varieties we're going to be trying this year have us really excited to see how they do. Some of the downsides, some of the losses this year include the greenhouse incident, the carrot bed that didn't really turn up to do anything, again, another problem with chickens, and probably with watering. Not really selling all of the plants that I thought I would, which is kind of a downside, but really I didn't put a whole lot of forethought into the marketing side of it and getting things rolling on that side, so I don't really feel too bad about it, and I actually did make quite a bit of money, quite a bit. I made enough that it paid for the little bit of effort that I put into it. So about 2 or 3 times now, these chickens have dug up our herb bed, which has been terrible for the roots and the plants. So we need to get in a better habit of making sure that the chickens, if they're out, we know exactly where they are and that they're not going to get back into the front yard or anywhere they shouldn't be. These are all things that we're learning. These are things that I think we're getting better in. We're getting some experiences that we didn't get the previous years. And with all those pieces lined up, I'm calling this a successful June already. I'm hopeful to see between now and the end of June a few more plants come up and start to really get some leaves on them. Our loofahs have started to come up, and they haven't really grown as fast as they have in the past few years, but I remember every time they really touch the tree and start climbing, it just takes off. So I'm not really worried about that. Our tomato patch, our wild tomato patch, isn't really big this year. In fact, it's almost non-existent. If you'll remember the past few years, this whole corner here is usually dominated by tomatoes. And I'm not seeing a whole lot start yet. I'm not seeing a whole lot of sprouts come up, which is kind of a bummer, but also it's fine. I'm sure somewhere in the yard they'll come up and they'll fall, and then the next year it'll produce tons and tons of volunteers. So thank you for coming along as I walk you through the garden. I have a lot to be excited for and a lot to be thankful for. I'm really interested to see just how much we were able to pull from the garden this year. As you remember from last year, perhaps, we are going to try again this Eat from the Garden challenge, where we're going to try to make it 30 days by only eating from the garden, a few exceptions for the sake of health and calorie intake. But we want our food predominantly created here on the land itself. Our egg production has just been through the roof lately, and that has been incredibly helpful. The chickens are paying for themselves by now. The egg production covers the cost of chicken feed. So we're at a point now where we can say we get free eggs, which is lovely. And that's a huge part of a diet, I think. We're also eager to try out canning this year. Once we start to get enough fruit from each individual type of plant, we are going to share that experience with you and share our learning through that, and hopefully come out of the other end with a few jars or maybe a dozen jars of different plants that we can extend into the fall and maybe early winter. We'll see. This year, I think we're going to do the 30-day challenge in August again. We found last year that that was when a lot of plants were really coming into fruition and we were being able to pull more fruit than usual. So we'll see. This is our garden, and this is the Urbstead. I appreciate you taking a walk with me today. And as always, grow on.